to sing that song. Not just because that's who I'm playing today. Thank you, William. But just right here is fine. But I just think that's a beautiful song. When I was growing up in the Catholic school, Mary was the one that I loved. She was the one, because I think of all her love, Mary and Jesus. In fact, when I was in first grade, I got to play the Virgin Mary. I know, it was a stretch. Shame on you. But I still remember, May is a big month for Mary. And I remember sitting there, and I was sitting in a chair, supposedly knitting, and young Jesus came up to me and said, "Mother, where is my father?" And I said, "He's out in the field working." That was my big line. But I always loved her. I remember when I was going through issues in my life when I was young, I remember going into the church and kneeling in front of her statue and praying, and I was crying. And I swear she moved. And I moved out of there. That scared me. So, anyway, I just wanted to, okay, this doesn't feel very Eastery, does it? But here's the thing. Mary was just about pure love. And here she has this child. Oh, I forgot this. Happy Easter. Goodness to you. But I loved that here's this woman that had this amazing child, this amazing son. The virgin part, I always had a little trouble. Once I found out how you have babies, I thought, okay, that was just a religious thing because there's something nasty about having a baby. And so that an angel came and implanted her. She would be arrested now if it didn't go well. I'm sorry, this was not what I intended. But this is what Spirit does to me. It just comes through me. And he has a sense of humor. But anyway, just imagine as your son is growing up and you know that you have this child that is this nothing but love. Everything he does, everywhere he goes, he's about love. And then he starts getting a following, and he's very educated. My understanding is that I think Mary had a brother that was very wealthy, and he was like into import export. He had a ship that he would take, and Jesus would travel with him a lot with him, and he studied all over the world. He studied with the Essenes. He really learned about spirituality and the oneness with God, and that we were that. And that's what he went into the world to teach, was our oneness with God. When he said, God and Father and I are one, he was talking about all of us. We are all one. We are that divine expression in individualized ways. And then she has to watch him be crucified. And this picture, I thought, I can't even imagine if something like that happened to one of my sons. The pain and how horrible that would be. And I just honor her for her strength and for her doing that. And what I do want to share with you is this. At the Last Supper, Jesus spoke to his disciples and told them it was time for him to leave. They were distraught upon hearing the news, and they said in disbelief, "You cannot go, Jesus. How shall we carry on without you?" Jesus replied, "You must find me in yourself." "How is that possible?" one said. "Will you step inside of us and live your life there?" And Jesus explained, "The life you have seen in, as, and through me is also your life. We share in that one life together. If I stay longer, you will become convinced that this is about me and miss the life I am referring to, which is also in, as, and through you." After a few moments of silence, one of them asked Jesus, "But should we not elevate you to the highest place among men and worship you?" And Jesus replied, "Only do as I did, and heed that life and spirit that is within you. Listen to its promptings. Follow what it shows and tells you. This is the way." And after speaking these words, Jesus turned and walked away. At some distance, one of them called out, "But Jesus, should the world not know about you?" He stopped and turned and said with compassion in his eyes, "Don't you see? This was never about me. It was always about you. You be Jesus now." And so that's what I want to talk about, is that we carry that on. That was Jesus' legacy to all of us. To whoever you are, he was the great example of love. You know, when that woman touched his garment and was healed, and she said, "Jesus healed me." He said, "No, it was your belief that healed you." So as a mother, I'm telling you to believe. Believe in yourself. Recognize the oneness. Listen to those promptings that come to you. Listen to your heart and follow your heart. That is what Jesus would want and do. And I know that when I'm always stuck, I always go, "Big Laura, what should I do?" And I'm calling in the divine. And it's amazing how an answer or a feeling, you may not hear a voice, but you will hear a feeling, an idea. That is the divine in each and every one of us. When Jesus said, "The Father and I are one," he knew. He knew that we are all the expressions of that divine. And so that's what Laura does, is she talks to Big Laura. And so from this message, I want to leave you with this final message. Be that heart. The fact that there's a highway to hell and only a stairway to heaven says a lot about anticipated traffic numbers. So, follow Jesus so you can go up those stairs. And so end your lesson.
On? That is why she's the irreverent reverend. I love the Mother Mary, though. It was hard for my brain to really grasp it because I know you so well, but it's so cool, and I appreciate it. So most of you know I was raised Jewish, and when I was in my earlier years, I went to Hebrew school and I was bat mitzvahed. And never in 1,000 years would I have imagined that I am standing here at an Easter service dressed like Mary Magdalene talking about the spirituality of Easter, but here I am. And, I thought, too, about my ancestors. Oh, God, they're rolling in their graves. They're like, where did we go wrong? How did she land here? How did she land here? Oy vey, what did we do? But you know what? They did everything right, because what religion is really all about is instilling within ourselves this understanding, this feeling of the presence of God. Everybody just calls it a little bit different, all these different religions, but it is one thing, and that's what we teach. It's all about spirit, and it's all about oneness, like Dr. Laura just said. And what I love about religion and what I love about how we teach is that, some of us might bump up against religion and not want to hear the message, but Ernest Holmes, who's the founder of Science of Mind, he found the universal truth. And that's all I'm doing here today, is speaking universal truth as it appears in the Easter story. Well, my part of the Easter story today for you is Mary Magdalene. And no, I did not learn about her in Hebrew school. So I had to do a little research about her. And I'm like, Dr. Laura was calling me a whore this morning. I was going to say prostitute, but she's influencing me really badly to just have a foul mouth. So I learned that she was considered a prostitute. And then I have another friend who is actually a channeler of Mary Magdalene. And she's like, I need to sit with you before my talk, because I want to just hear some information from you so I get things as right as I can. And she goes, oh gosh, Mary was like, really, they believed that she was married to Jesus, that she was his person. That she had the spiritual intelligence that he did, and they were really partners, truly partners. And I love that, because it's this whole other awareness of the power of women. And so how cool that in this day and age, the truth is coming out about her. So it's an honor for me to appear today as Mary Magdalene and tell you what I know about her in the Easter story. And the most profound piece of the Easter story that she is what she was the first person, actually, sorry about that. She was the person who saw Jesus before he ascended. I mean, that's a pretty big deal, right? She was given that role. And Jesus said to her, let me give you the background, because I learned so much on Google about her and this whole thing. So she goes to the empty tomb. The stone's been rolled out. She's at the empty tomb, crying her eyes out, looking for Jesus. And this gardener comes up to her. And she's like, who wants to be dealing with the gardener, right? You're sitting there weeping, you're upset, and the gardener comes up to you. And he says, I'm not the gardener, I'm Jesus. I'm Jesus. And to her surprise, it was Jesus. And so she was clinging to him, putting her arms around him, trying to plead him to stay. And he said to her, do not cling to me, because I've not yet ascended to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. I love how inclusive Jesus was, right? We're all one. It's not me doing this and you separate from it all. We're all one in this experience of oneness and love and expansion. We're all in it together. And as Dr. Laura was talking about, there was just such a clinging that the disciples and Mary were holding on to Jesus because they did not want to let him go. He was so huge and wonderful to them because he opened them up to their hearts. He opened them up to the idea that I and the Father are one, or as we say, Spirit expresses in, as, and through us. That's the same message, different story. And so she didn't want to let him go. She didn't want him to ascend, but he had somewhere to go, and he was leaving. So he left. Now, many of you have heard this saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. How many of you have heard that? Like way too many times, right? But the teacher does appear when we're ready. And sometimes the teacher looks like a traditional teacher, right? You're a student in a class, or you've got a guru, something of that nature. And sometimes the teacher might be a partner, or someone you're having a relationship with, or a family member. The teachers are plentiful in our lives. Some we like, some we don't like. But the teacher is always appearing when we're ready. When there's something inside of ourselves that's ready to grow and ready to expand and ready to evolve, and we need a little help. We need our eyes opened, maybe a little bit more, to know whatever it is we need to know to ascend, to expand, to be able to live a greater life, to be able to see something untapped inside of ourselves that wants to be free and live as us. The teacher comes to help us along. And they're there just to help us along, like Jesus. He was not there to be worshiped. He was not there to be the one that is so much better than us. Even in the Bible, Jesus says, "You will do greater things than I." But where does that go? That's not on the headlines of the churches. No. But that is what he taught. You will do greater things than I. Because we are just as enlightened. We are just as spiritual as Jesus was. Because we are all God inside of ourselves. You know, something that's not said is when the student is ready, the teacher disappears. Because they do. Sometimes it hurts really bad, like the Easter story. Sometimes we're glad when the teacher is gone because we're done. But the disappearance of the teacher is part of life because we have got to evolve. We have got to expand. We've got to embody what the teacher has taught us. We've got to live it. We've got to know it's everything that we are, that teacher represented. What we need to not do is say that as the teacher left, so went whatever good they brought into my life. Like Jesus brought a lot of good to people, a lot of understanding, a lot of love, a lot of compassion, so much. But it didn't leave with Jesus. It's still here in our hearts. And that's one huge aspect, as Dr. Laura said in her talk. That was such a beautiful quote. Jesus taught the disciples and all of us to remember it's right here inside of us, not just with him. And so it is for us to remember that on Easter because that knowledge and that wisdom brings the new life that's ready to be lived by means of us. I know a lot of people are going through a lot of loss. They always are. It's always part of life. Loss happens. Mary lost her man, the love of her life. She lost him. Mother Mary lost her cherished son. But what Jesus taught them, what he taught, is there's new life that is ready to be lived in the wake of loss. It opens the door for something new to come in because we are all expanding and we are all growing. We were not meant to stay in one place. That is the reality here. We are meant to change. We are meant to grow. And so that's what to take away. Our talk title as a group was Together We Rise in Love. And love is a huge deal. Huge deal. When we're not in love, when we're hating, when we're angry, when we're seeing duality everywhere, we're in constriction and we aren't growing and we're not expanding. And right now where our world is today, oneness and togetherness is so vitally important for us to be able to create a better world for us individually and collectively. So together we must rise in love to open the doors that Jesus opened for us, to see my brother and I are one, to know not what they are doing and to love anyways, to be able to stand in such a place of self-love, because it starts with self-love, to stand in such a deep, profound place of self-love where we're able to look upon another, not judge them, to not throw them in a ditch, but say, you must be hurting. Let me hold you. That's rising together in love. And so, as Mary Magdalene, I am honored to be able to tell you what she is wanting us all to know, is it's a new day. And yes, there's sadness and sorrow and loss, but inside of ourselves is such new, vibrant life that Jesus told us to embrace and live into. And today's the day to find it and live it and find that light that is beckoning you to live your greatest, greatest life here and now. Thank you.
Oh, man, I got to clean up. 2 great talks. And for everyone, my mother's over 2,000 years old, so she doesn't quite understand what she's always saying, so.
I look great, don't I?
Oh, you look fabulous. Yes, exactly. 2 great talks. And here we go with mine. And it's nice that fan's right in my way, so I'm going to step back down and be amongst you. Jesus was a carpenter. How does that transcend religion? Translate to religion. Well, whatever. You know me. All right, here we go. A carpenter. He created from pieces of wood to create something functional in other people's lives. That means a lot, to be of service. And religion comes in and says, I believe in this person for what they've done. They started off at XYZ space. But what if Jesus was a mechanic or a lapis, someone who does stonework and creates jewelry, the mechanic that works with engines and metal and sculptures and builds from that aspect? What would Catholicism be? Would there even be Catholicism? Because up until a couple thousand years ago, there's no such thing as Catholicism. It was only until Jesus came in and taught nothing but love and compassion for your fellow person, for your fellow man, did that start a divide in the Jewish religion. Because everyone knows that Jesus was Jewish. But because he had an idea, and people followed that and believed in that idea, that when he transcended or made his transition, they split off, took a fork in the road of life, and started something new. And now, like any other religion, there's multiple religions that are expressed and followed on this planet. I don't think any of them are right or any of them are wrong. They are just different expressions of that ideal of taking something that is raw and organic, which is yourself, before you're enlightened, before you realize who you are that stone, that nugget, unpolished, that diamond in the rough. But each philosophy, each religion hones that, carves that, sculpts it into something of beauty. Each and every one of you, regardless of your foundation of faith, are beautiful. Why? Because here we believe that each and every one of you are nothing less than the pure expression of spirit, and that we are all one. Forget the story, listen to the message. What did he teach? He didn't teach carpentry. He didn't teach mechanics. He taught love. And love is where we need to begin. At that aspect of your own life, when you come from love, there is nothing to be ashamed of, regardless of your profession. Jesus was a carpenter. I had a picture that I was going to show of what I look like when I'm not dressed up like this. Because believe me, this is not the William that I am the other 6 days of the week. I'm dirty. I'm grungy. I've got stuff. Why? Because I'm a carpenter. I'm designing, I'm building, I'm taking something old and creating something new. But here on this stage, on this day, each and every one of us, not just me, because like what Dr. Dale said, that Jesus said, all these things I do, you can do and more. So live your life from that aspect of love, what Jesus taught. When you have compassion for your fellow person and just allow yourself to live in that divine aspect, that divine energy, your life is better. I mean, I had trials this week myself. Had a person cut me off on the road. I almost started to go down the highway to hell, is it wrong? But I caught myself and said, you know what? Does it really matter that I get to my destination 10 seconds faster than what it is if I let this person in front of me? Think about that in your own life. How important is it to be next in line? There was another opportunity this week where I was waiting in line for something at a shop. And we had to call a clerk over to help open up the cabinet. Well, by the time the clerk came, someone else had kind of just jumped in because they were there. And again, another opportunity of that divine aspect of this life showing me to be patient, to be kind, to be loving. It's amazing at how when you live your life from that aspect, it's not so much about being kind and loving to the person who you may have thought had offended you, but when you live in that energy, that aspect of the divine ideal of who and what you truly are, that love is for yourself. So I call upon you on this day, live life from ease. Live life from love. And you will find the day goes by much smoother. That at the end of the day, yes, you may be tired from physical activities, but that is such a different tired than the mental strain that sometimes life can put upon you on your path. Set that down. Take off that thorny crown of trials and tribulations of the relative life and live that absolute life of love, because you are nothing less than the embodiment of the divine in action. So buckle up, Buttercup, and enjoy the ride.
My son, you never disappoint.